Junior Church edition, and today's a special day because I have my daughter, Faith. And just to introduce, in case you don't know her, she is 7. She loves early mornings, stuffed animals, and she loves to snuggle. Right? So, first we're going to do is sing a song. So, we're going to sing the song, God is So Good. So, let's sing out, okay? God is so good. God is so good. God is so good. He's so good to me. He answers prayer. He answers prayer. He answers prayer. He's so good to me. Last one. I love him so. I love him so. I love him so. He's so good to me. Very good. Well, today we're going to topic is one taken from the Bible, and we're going to be looking at another narrative, another story from Moses. And this is what we're going to call today the complaint department. Do you know what a complaint department is offhand? Have you ever heard of that term before?
Complaining?
Well, it has to do with complaining. But a lot of times with stores, they'll have a little box. Used to do this a lot, but nowadays it's all online, of course. But back in the day, they'd have a little box, and if you had a complaint, you could leave it in the box. And if you had something good, but most of the time it was mostly just complaints. And they would leave it in that little box, and that would be the complaint department. So sometimes when your mom or dad might say, hey, take it to the complaint department, that's what they're kind of joking about. So what does it mean to complain? What does complaining sound like? If you were to complain, what would it sound like? I don't want to do this. I don't want to clean my room.
Life is so terrible.
Oh, exactly. So today we're going to talk about the complaint department. And it's interesting for me because in my household rules, obviously there's biblical rules, but then I have other rules I like to add to my house. One that I had for years is rule number 1. Rule number 1 is what, Faith? Whining doesn't work. She doesn't like that one for some reason. So whining doesn't work. And the idea of sometimes when whining takes place, I'll hold up the one finger. Used to do this a lot for some reason. But the fact is that would mean stop whining. Because it just doesn't really do much. But do you know in the Bible, people would whine? Doesn't surprise you, right? Because they were the same as we are.
Like a lot of people would whine about Jesus and why they don't like him.
Mm-hmm. Right, so we're going to talk about Moses and how they were complaining about Moses. So I'm going to read a passage of scripture and I have some questions for you, okay? Okay, so this is from Exodus chapter 16, and we're going to read verses 2 down to verse 8. And I'm just going to make quick comments here and ask some questions. It says, And the whole congregation of the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said to them, Oh, that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt. For when we sat by the pots of meat, and when we ate bread to the full, for you have brought us out here in the wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Then the Lord said to Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain quota every day, that I may test them whether they will walk in my way or not. And it shall be on the 6th day that they shall prepare what they brought in, and it shall be twice as much as they gathered daily. Then Moses and Aaron said to all the children of Israel, At evening you shall know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt. In the morning you shall see the glory of the Lord, for he hears your complaints against the Lord. But what are we that you complain against us? And Moses said, This shall be seen when the Lord gives you meat in the evening, and in the morning bread to the full. For the Lord hears your complaints, which you make against him. And what are we? Your complaints are not against us, but against the Lord. Okay, so here's some important points. Kind of a long passage in a sense, but some good ideas here. So the first thing we're going to look at is the idea of that when we complain, it's a focus on our problems. What does it mean to focus?
Like how Grace focuses on her schoolwork so she can get it right.
Right. You want to focus. You want to kind of lock in and kind of make sure you do it good, right? So it's kind of a thought. Okay. So when you think about focusing here, sometimes when we focus on the problems, we forget also everything else going on around. Say, for example, you found a penny on the ground. Okay. You're walking down the street, you find a penny. You're all excited about that penny. Okay. But another few minutes later, you accidentally trip and you drop that penny, and you're crying, "Oh, I dropped the penny!" What would that look like?
Basically, he would be really sad.
Really sad, yeah. And so, but all of a sudden, your mom or dad's like, "Well, here, have a $5 bill instead." No, what sounds better, the penny or the $5 bill?
$5 bill.
But because you're whining and complaining, you're so focused on that penny, you can't think, "Oh, well, that sounds much better. I'll take the $5 bill." You're actually thinking, "I want my penny back." It makes no sense, but sometimes that's what whining does. The children of Israel were so focused on their hunger that they forgot some of the other issues going on, how God was blessing them in such amazing ways. Another thought here, they also forgot the past. Now, when we think about how much God has provided us, sometimes we forget what God has done in the past. So, one of the previous events that happened in this account of the Bible was the crossing of the Red Sea. Now, what is the crossing of the Red Sea? What happened with Moses and the Red Sea?
Moses, banged his staff on a rock and
Okay.
prayed to God,
Mm-hmm.
and the sea parted.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when they were finished crossing the sea,
Mhm.
then all the people who were trying to get them
Mhm.
just died.
Oh, that's true. That they did die. But it's interesting. Moses had his staff. It talks about his cane or his staff. He raised it up, and the waters drew back, and they were able to walk right through the middle of the water, right, on dry ground. Have you ever walked through water before? No, me neither. So, but that's an amazing miracle. But they completely forgot about that. Do you think if that God could move back the Red Sea, do you think God could maybe feed them? So sometimes we forget that logic. We forget actually that God has blessed us before. God will probably bless us today and probably bless us in the future. Very important to remember. Also with complaining, sometimes it falls on other people. And it's interesting, notice here, Moses and Aaron were kind of taking the blame. They were the ones taking the complaint. But it says that really the complaint was against who? Who was the complaint really against? I'm going to point up.
God?
God. So when we complain, not are we complaining about, I don't like my dinner, I don't like this, I don't like to eat this, I want pizza instead. Okay, who are we complaining to? Probably our mom or dad or someone who watches over us. But really, in a sense, who are we complaining to? We're complaining to
God.
God. So it's interesting when you think about that. Often our complaining, no matter our age, even at my age, sometimes when you think about it, we're really complaining not just about stuff here, but really we're complaining to God. Interesting to note that that's noted here in this passage. Last thing is also notice how God did provide the food provided. That in the end, he brought down manna. Do you know what manna is?
Not really.
Okay.
But it's basically in one of the stories of the Bible, Moses prayed, or whoever it was,
Right, Moses.
and manna came down so they could eat.
Right. And that's what's talking about in this passage. For 6 days they would get manna on the ground, which doesn't sound very safe and kind of gross because of germs and stuff, whatever. But the fact is that the manna would come down on the ground, and you know what the word actual manna means? It means, what is it? Why do you think that's the case? Because they looked at the bread, the kind of bread substance on the ground, and looked at it and said, what?
What is it?
What is it? So that's manna. And then it also talks about how quail would actually come at evening, and quail are a type of bird. Have you ever had quail before?
What is quail again?
Quail is a type of bird.
Gross.
Okay. But probably, most likely, I haven't had quail myself, but it probably tasted like chicken. You know why?
I like chicken.
Because everything tastes like chicken. So the fact is, it's just, it was probably one of those things that they learned how to do, because this was, remember, they were in the wilderness for 40 years. So they had all kinds of different recipes and how to make, manna this and manna that, and quail stew and quail barbecue and, quail over the pit and stuff. But
Dad, I don't think they had had barbecue back then.
What? You don't think so? I don't know about that.
Or hot dogs.
Or hot dogs. Well, that might be better than quail after 40 years. But the fact is this. In the end, they had to remember that God was blessing them. Now, what special holiday is coming up for us soon?
Christmas.
Oh, well, that's true. It's
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. And why do we like Thanksgiving?
Because we give thanks to the food God gave us.
Mm-hmm. And all the blessings, really, that God gives us.
And we also spend time with our family.
That's
but
true.
that's not happening anytime
That's this year because of COVID. But the fact is, it's just when we stop and think about it, we have to stop and give thanks for all God's blessings. For the food, often we have turkey, stuffing, all that good stuff.
Mashed potatoes.
Mashed potato. Ooh, I love my mashed potatoes. And what do we have for dessert?
Pie.
Pie. Yes, and I love pie. So.
Too bad Mima's not there.
Wow, special shout out to Mima. But the fact is just when we stop and think about it, Thanksgiving is about counting our blessings, saying, God, thank you for all that we've done. Thank you for all that you've done for us. So when I think about the Israelites complaining in the wilderness, they forgot to stop and say, thank you to God. So when you start complaining, maybe it's a good time to take a step back, take a big breath. Okay, and say, thank you, God, for all the things I do have and all the things I will have. That's a great thought, isn't it? Is she still giving thanks? Okay, that being said, thanks for joining us, and hopefully you got something from our junior church lesson today. God bless.